Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and today I have a start of a new series that I'm doing. It is viewer submitted games. Now if you've been on my Discord, I've mentioned it a couple times in other videos. This has been a series I've been wanting to start for a while, and today we're finally doing it. And I'll have more information about submitting your own games, um, the things I'm looking for. I'll have more information about all of that at the end of the video. It is also in the announcements tab, or the announcements channel of my Discord. If you scroll up, it's pinned as well. More information about that there if you want to have it written down. But with that being said, let's show off the first person up to bat. It is Baron von Glauer, or Baron von Glower, or Baron von Glover. I don't know. I'm just going to call him Baron. Apologies, Baron, for butchering your name. Um, yeah. So, essentially how this format is going to work is people are going to send me their games. It can be from ranked. It can be from draft. In this case, Baron sent me a series from his OCC play-ins from June, actually. Um, so yeah, it can be basically anything, and I'm going to review the gameplay, say things I think you could do better, things you could just do differently, things you did well, and just sort of explain different ways to think about the game and how to improve. Because at the end of the goal, the point of the series is to improve. It's not to dunk on people. So it also doesn't matter how good or bad you are. Send me in your videos. And yeah, with that being said, um, there's a few things to note before we hit play. So this was recorded in June 2022 for the June OCC qualifiers. And for the June meta, self-damage had just become a thing. Like, I don't even think there was a lot of people playing it in the play-ins. OCC top 8 had 4 or 5 different people bringing self-damage, and it was the first time it had ever appeared in a top 8. It had the patch that buffed the 34th had just gone through, and this was really the first tournament it saw its outing. This was also the first time we saw Britain, Italy air in tournament. So both of these decks are just on the precipice of becoming popular, which is why we don't see it any of those decks in any of these games. And this also means that there was sort of in a weird flux in the meta where the best decks had just sort of been nerfed, a few cards had been buffed, people didn't know how good they were. So people were really playing around with a lot of different things. And yeah, just keep that in mind if you see cards differently or you're just wondering why they're playing these decks. So, game one is Baron on a pretty standard Feigned Retreat Jagro. I say pretty standard because, as you see in this mulligan, he is running, I believe, one copy of Martyr. And let me quickly check deck lists. I remember there was something else he was running in here, which was a little odd. Yes, Geburg's Pioneers. So 2 copies of Geburg's Pioneer, 1 copy of Martyr. Other than that, it's pretty standard Feigned Retreat Jagro. Whereas his opponent, Captain A, is playing U.S. Poland Legion's Ramp. So that's sort of what I mean by the meta was in flux. Also, apologies, this is the best quality I can get the video in. No, you're not just like accidentally watching in like 180. This is unfortunately the quality the video was recorded in. So yeah, just bear with me through this. So here we saw Baron do a full mulligan. Makes sense. Got back a pretty good hand. I mean, Signal on 1, pretty straightforward. It was the only 1-cost card in his deck. And then 35T on 2. Doesn't die to the Red Devils. And unfortunately, Captain A has the United We Stand. So here, I think Baron actually does a very, very good play, which is Whirlwind Attack. Now, there's a few reasons to attack here, rather than just, for example, playing Mito Cavalry or like even just Mito Pass or Warble Cavalry. The reason the best play is doing Whirlwind attack is one, it's very credit efficient. Two, it gets damage in on this Red Devils without sacrificing the Whirlwind. So Captain A runs a certain number of buffs in his deck, namely Unity is Strength. So if he has, for example, like a 30-second plus a Unity is Strength, this Red Devils would go from a 1-3 to a 3-5. And a 3-5 is now suddenly trading with all 3 units in your hand. Whereas by getting 2 damage in with the Whirlwind now, the Whirlwind stays alive. If he has the buff, it's not as big of a deal, because you can take it out with 2 units, you can even just bombing raid it next turn and not lose any units. And if he does not have the buff, it means for 2 credits, you can kill the Red Devils, either with Cavalry Regiment or with Whirlwind, and then you'll have 3 credits left over to take back the front line. So it's just sort of investing your credits into future turns. It's not establishing the most on the board. You're basically just playing a 2-credit card for 4 credits, but you are establishing the board forwards. And that's exactly what we're going to see him being rewarded for this turn. He can clear the front line. There's a few different plays, actually. So there's an argument for just playing Mito attack, which will use up all your credits, and you're left with a 2-2 Mito and a 2-2 Whirlwind in this support line. The play I would do here, and I think what Baron does here is a mistake. So let's just see what Baron does quickly. So Baron removes all the units and gets Bicycle Regiment to the front line. What I think here is a slightly better play is actually killing the Red Devils with the Whirlwind and then moving both Cavalry Regiment and Bicycle Regiment to the front line with the Whirlwind. So the end result is you have the 2-1 Cavalry, the 2-1 Whirlwind, and the 1-1 Bicycle Regiment, and your opponent still has the Milk Truck. And the reason I think that this is, I would say, a better play is if your opponent wants to make the trade Milk Truck onto Bicycle Regiment, that's perfectly fine, because it's using up a credit, and Captain A is running California Regiments, which cost 6 to play an attack. So you're sort of like, that's really almost the only Blitz unit in the deck. I believe Captain A is also running 101st, which again is 6 credits to play an attack. So if your opponent's spending 1 credit to attack with Milk Truck, it means they're probably not removing your other units. And if they hit the Bicycle Regiment, you're perfectly fine because you just keep the Cavalry Regiment. So, like, the end result is you still have 4 damage in the front line and you've wasted your opponent a credit. Whereas here, you're losing the unit for your opponent for free. You are spending the credits to lose your unit. I think it's just better here to make your opponent spend the credits to lose the unit, if that makes sense. Like here, you would much rather have 3 units in the front line and your opponent has the Milk Truck still. Because here, if your opponent just has a California, suddenly you're down almost all your damage. Said Captain A does Plan West and the Milk Truck. Another reason, sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier. Another reason that playing the Milk Truck, or not killing the Milk Truck before was arguably better, is because your opponent could just not attack with the Milk Truck. Your opponent could just spend 6 credits on something else. So, for example, your opponent could do this turn. In which case, you just have the bombing raid afterwards. And, like, if they play the units on the other side, then bombing raid hits, you can hit bombing raid face, kill the Milk Truck, or if they play a Plan West, which is what they did in this situation. So, for example, like, what's the worst case scenario that your opponent could do if you leave the Milk Truck up? Kill Bicycle Regiment and play Plan West. Your response is just bombing raid, and then you have 2 units left over. So, yeah. The Type 93 draw here is actually really good for Baron, and I swear that this video is worse than 480. Yep, just goes face. That was a good play. And Captain A does not have a large amount of healing, and he has played 2 Milk Trucks already. Let me actually just check Captain A's deck. Captain A runs 3 Milk Trucks, and does he not run We Can Do It? He does not run any copies of We Can Do It. Because this is a tournament situation, it is open deck lists. Obviously, if you're just playing a ranked game or you're playing a draft game, you don't know what's in your opponent's deck. In this case, it is open deck list tournament, so Baron knows exactly the cards in Captain A's deck. And Captain A does not actually run We Can Do It. So, with that third milk truck coming down, Captain A is out of healing. Great play by Baron, just moving everything up. Unlike the last situation, where I said it's better to move up everything, like move up the cavalry regiment, move up the bicycle regiment, even though bicycle regiment dies. Here, it is correct to hold back the Type 93, because the Type 93 is much better than a 1-1 Fury, because right now the Type 93 is buffing 3 attacks, so it's functionally a 4-1. So you don't really want to trade a 4-1 with a 1-2, especially when the 1-2 doesn't even die. So Captain A goes for depth charges, which is interesting. I think he might have had a better chance going for penicillin there. And like not even like for example, if he didn't even attack into the bicycle regiment, if he just played Jasko penicillin, or not Jasko penicillin, but Jasko double research, and actually he had enough credits to do Jasko double research. No, that's not true, because he gained the credit slot from playing depth charges. So yeah, so if Captain A had done a double research Jasko, and I am going to also comment on the play of the opponents, because it's still just a learning opportunity, just because it's not you making the mistake. For everybody watching, they're not Baron either, so in this situation, yeah, I'm just going to comment on both players. So here, Captain A 100% should go for double research and just play Jasko and not trade the milk truck at all. Baron is left with 2 bicycle regiments and the Mito regiment, which means that he can deal 6 damage, which can drop Captain A to 7 health. And it's a situation where if if Baron top decks Raiding Brigade, which is literally the only card in his deck that will, well, I guess Sendai as well. If he top decks removal for the Jasko, then you're taking even more damage. However, like you're dropping to 2 health with Mito Signal, and that would be bad. You're probably not coming back with that, even with Penicillin. However, I don't see how Captain A can possibly win this game by just delaying it. You always have to look for your outs in games, and in this case, Captain A's out is either getting nukes, like drastically limiting damage, and then drawing into nukes to remove the signal regiment, or going for penicillin, which will draw him into enough legions to close out the game. That's sort of his win condition right now. By going for the depth charges and then Hellcat trade, he's essentially just surviving longer. Like this way, he's like guaranteed to survive like 2 or 3 turns, whereas with the other play, he might die in like 2 or 3 turns. However, with the other play, it's he dies in 2 or 3 turns, or he wins the game. Here, it's just he dies in 3 or 4 turns, 100% of the time. So, yeah, play to your outs. And he does go for the mass deployment and rips the Persian, which certainly going to help. So here, I think Baron makes a huge mistake. And that huge mistake is not moving up Signal Regiment. So, moving up Signal Regiment, it's not going to stop your opponent from getting Persian to the front line. At all, Persian can just hit Signal Regiment. But what it's going to do is it's going to slow your opponent down. So currently, by just doing this, your opponent's going to attack phase for 9 with Persian, which drops you to 10. And then they have a 9-8 in the front line. Which means you are dead in probably 2 turns. Like, they can move up the combat engineers, you can trade the 22nd into the combat engineers, but if they draw any burst, like a strategic bombing, another Hellcat, even if they just top deck another combat, well, actually, I guess they don't run combat engineers straight in their deck, but there's just, the odds you die in 2 turns is really high, and you are letting your opponent hit you for 9, essentially. You are saying the Signal Regiment is worth more than 9 health. And at this point in the game, It absolutely is not. Maybe if your opponent was at 5 health and they didn't have Jasko, this Signal Regiment would be really, really valuable. Um, However, at this point in the game, Jasko completely negates the effect of Signal Regiment. And even if you were able to top deck a Raiding Brigade, which is the only card in your deck you can top deck to kill Jasko, because if you top deck the Sendai, you're going to be playing it on the Persian. Um, Even if you top deck Raiding Brigade, you don't have enough units to kill your opponent with the Signal Regiment. Like, you're not even close. Your opponent has way too much health. And even if your opponent was low, they're going to have a Persian in the front line, so you have to top deck Sendai. The only way you don't die is if you top deck a Sendai in as many turns as you can. Um, However, by not moving up the signal, you die sooner, which means you have less turns to top deck Sendai, which means there is a smaller chance you draw Sendai, which means there is a much smaller chance you win the game. Signal Regiment is a very valuable card, but you have to recognize times where it is worth sacrificing it. And this is one of those times, and I think it's actually quite a big mistake by not moving it up. So here, Captain A is just going to trade the Red Devils, hit face for 9. And honestly, I think Captain A should just move up both units next turn. Um, I definitely see the argument for doing that. Obviously, it would have been punished by the desperate measures. Um, but yeah, I mean, just sticking units into the front line, you're in a situation where you're going to die if your opponent top decks Sendai, and you're going to win if they don't top deck Sendai. So it also makes the Jasko buffed by combat engineer, so you're getting 2 1 attack units in the front line, which is setting up lethal. So here, Stars and Stripes, not strategic bombing. Um, and we see Jasko blocks all the damage. And Baron top decks Dina into double type 94, which is just even better than a Sendai. Kills Persian and survives at 1 health. So here, Captain A plays B17F, but he does not have enough credits to attack with it, and even if he could, the Dina, as a fighter, is blocking it. Baron top decking Shiden's a really good card, and here he chooses to just kill the B17F. Again, open deck lists, which is why Baron knows there's not air defense in Captain A's deck. If this was a ranked game, obviously it would be correct to attack with one of the Type 94s first, check for air defense, then play air Shiden, or attack with Shiden. But in this case, open deck list, so Baron does not know. I do think it is worth considering just having gone face with Shiden. Actually, no, that's not true. Because your opponent will just trade with the B17F, and then because of all these one attack units in the Jasko, you're not able to kill the B17F. You're not going to be able to kill your opponent. Obviously, you could with like a Type 93 draw, but or a Raiding Brigade draw or a Sendai draw. However, just killing the B17F, I think it's fair. Captain A runs very, very little burn, so essentially just limiting their possibilities to kill you. Because again, if you draw Type 93, it's lethal this turn. So yeah, here it's not incredibly important what you do, because even if your opponent retreats Shiden, you just replay it with Blitz and Fury and you kill it. Like if your opponent has the underground state. I guess worst case scenario, and if they top deck lethal, they top deck lethal. There's nothing you can do about that. I guess worst case scenario would be like plan West, then underground state, because then it means they have enough guards to not die. Like plan West underground state and then the section, so they buff the legions up to 4/4s. Then you can't kill them. In which case, playing the key was probably better, but that's a very, very unlikely situation. Captain A does not top deck lethal, and does not top deck Plan West and Karis, or Plan West and Underground State. However, he does top deck Uprising to fully wipe the board. And I'd like to point out this very nice ordering by Captain A is he plays United We Stand to kill Signal Regiment first, because actually the Signal Regiment triggers. So they change Signal Regiment so that if an AoE kills Signal Regiment and other units, it will still deal damage for the other units that die. However, Jasko dies at the same time as everything else, and then the Signal Regiment triggers, which means you would take damage to this Uprising, despite having the Jasko on the board, because the Jasko dies at the same time as the Signal, and then the damage is dealt afterwards, meaning Jasko does not block it. So actually really good play by Captain A, taking out the Signal Regiment, which buys him another turn. But here, Baron has Key and Akita. And Captain A needs to top deck Strategic Bombing or 101st. But they don't. They have a B-17 Flying Fortress. And no guard, which means Baron takes game 1. So now we go into game 2. And Baron has his Britain-German Commonwealth deck. This is a very weird deck. It's not a deck that I'm particularly familiar with. It's not really like a defined archetype. It's more of just sort of like I'm going to assume homebrew control deck. Maybe if Baron watches this, maybe he can explain where this deck comes from. It's not a discard deck, so you might be familiar with Britain-German Handlock. That's a deck that I've actually played quite a lot, and innovated in quite a lot, but this is very, very different. The only discard is 2 Annihilations, is very order heavy, and the main win condition of the deck is Commonwealth, as you see from these fortifications. Captain A is once again on the US-Poland deck, and here Baron keeps 2 fortifications along with the Seaforth and the Panzer H. Seaforth and Panzer H I think are very good keeps because, well, one, Seaforth's a 4/7 guard. It's almost always correct to keep Seaforth. And Panzer H, Baron's running a very order-heavy deck, very specific order-heavy deck. It's almost plays like a combo deck in a lot of ways because it's even running the Patriotic Firestorm, the countermeasure that reduces damage to 1, like each source of damage to 1 on the turn it triggers. So I understand those 2 keeps, and completely agree with those 2 keeps. Keeping the 2 fortifications seems very, very strange to me. I guess the idea is this way you don't have to dig for fortifications. It's essentially just find Commonwealth and win on turn 12. However, that just seems really, really odd to me. Wouldn't you rather mulligan your fortifications for card draw? Because the card draw will find you fortifications and other cards. Or, if you don't get card draw, you'll get removal. So you can remove your opponent's units, you don't take damage, which means you need less healing overall over the course of the game, because the Seaforth is great, but the Seaforth is not going to prevent all damage from turns 1 to 12. So, the double fortification keep, at first glance, does seem really wrong to me. However, I have not played this deck, so it's possible that this is just an entirely experiential-based thing. Baron has played this deck a lot, and it just recognizes that despite seeming sort of illogical and counterproductive, keeping fortifications is actually correct in a slower matchup. Maybe. Again, I'm not sure. I don't know if this is a deck that Baron sort of innovated and has been working on for like months and months and months up until this point, or if this is a deck that Baron created earlier this month and is quite new on. So, not a huge fan of keeping the fortifications. And this is a just very slow opening from both decks, which it's kind of hard to tell who it benefits more. Obviously, having the Milk Truck to get a bit of ramp going is really good for Captain A. However, looking at Baron's hand, I think he's pretty happy that he didn't see, like, some Red Devils or, like, even, like, a turn 3 Hellcat. Kind of would have been really annoying to deal with, because you don't really want to play Root out on just a Hellcat. And he's really trying to prevent as much damage as possible. And here Captain A goes for the turn 4 really, just slam Tardao. And this play I respect it. I obviously can't see Captain A's hand, but just recognizing Baron's deck for what it is, just very, very slow, and just trying to get as much threat down on the board as possible. And here, great play by Baron, reducing the cost on the Annihilation to set up for playing Annihilation on turn 5 to get rid of this tile now, because it is a huge threat. Discarding Red Devil's pretty unfortunate. Again, we can't see Captain A's hand, but you have to imagine that's got to be the worst card in it. And with the 2 Milk Trucks, which is 2 out of his 3 healing, he has healed to 24, and that it does have to be something on your mind when you are in Baron's position. Fortunately for him, Captain A played really hard into this root out. I mean, with the size of his hand, it's entirely possible that it's fine anyways. Like, even if you just sort of accept that if your opponent has root out, they have root out, that's cool. It's not like that board was special. But it does certainly work out for Baron, just being able to relieve all of that pressure. And here comes down some more Legions and a KARDS. And this is the first turn where I think things start to go wrong for Baron. Baron self-described this game as like a complete mess. And it really is, and we will start to see that here. So here there's quite a few different options. You can do... The option that I'm leaning towards personally would be playing a Seaforth to protect Wellington, and then using the Wellington to kill the KARDS. Seems like a pretty good play. It's also possible that you can just straight up play Sexton. Not a huge fan of that play, because Sexton's not protected. It can die to a Hellcat, and these Legions are going to be getting buffed. Like, Sexton doesn't deal with the KARDS, so these Legions are going to go to a 4-4, and then your Sexton can't kill anything. You could theoretically play Root out, kill the KARDS, and then Wellington kill a Legions, or Wellington hit face. You can do Sexton and Monty. You can do Wellington and Monty. There's a ton of different plays you can do here. And we see Baron starts with the Panzer 3H, and I think that's got to be the worst card he could have played in his entire hand in this situation, because what does it accomplish? Like, what are you looking for on the Panzer 3H? Because what could you play that is going to be worth, like, better than with 4-3 credits than Wellington? Because this Wellington is looking really, really good here, and by playing the Panzer 3H, it means the Wellington is not protected if you had played a Seaforth, for example. And if you're worried about the size of these Legions, if your opponent plays a Unity of Strength, buffs the Legions up to like an 8-8 or something, you can play Panzer 3H and look for a Sudden Strike on the following turn, and play the Sudden Strike on the following turn. These Legions are in the support line, they're not a threat. Also, because of the nature of playing your combo, like playing a Commonwealth combo style deck, is if you play the Panzer 3H and one of the 3 options is Commonwealth, you have to pick the Commonwealth, because you cannot afford to put Commonwealth onto the bottom of your deck. Your opponent will just kill you. And if we go back and look at his options, it's an Observer Core, which accomplishes absolutely nothing. There's a Sudden Strike, which is good, but it's not needed. Like, he would have preferred to have just drawn the Sudden Strike next turn. And the Lancaster B3, which is a really good card, and you would love to have it in your hand for the future. However, can you realistically pick it over the Sudden Strike here? And I think the answer is no. So, yeah, like, you could argue that, oh, this is just like a pretty unfortunate outcome off of the Panzer 3H, but, like, what was a good outcome in that situation? Like, I understand that you're trying to cycle through your deck and look for card draw, look for Commonwealth, but, like, you're not going to be... You're still 5 turns off Commonwealth, and you aren't exactly about to play a Lend-Lease. This KARDS is threatening to deal damage to the HQ. It's threatening to generate more card draw and more buff for these Legions. Yeah. And here, Baron goes Wellington face after hitting the rope. And I think Baron just panicked. Like, I think he played the Panzer 3H, and then realized, oh wait, I probably shouldn't have done that, because now I can't play Wellington without it being protected, and you can see he hovers around the Sudden Strike, he hovers over the Monty, he's thinking, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? I think maybe he thought he had enough credits to do Monty and Wellington on the same turn, after a Panzer H. Like, play Panzer H, look for the draw, because draw first, then play Monty, then do Wellington attack. It's maybe he thought he did that, and then I think once he realized he was running out of time, he saw the timer start ticking down. He just went for a play, which is Wellington face, and I understand the concept of Wellington face. You've seen your opponent play 4 out of their 6 healing. 12 of you count penicillin, but just for argument's sake so far, you've seen them play 4 out of their 6 healing. So playing Wellington now, you drop your opponent to 20. You know Lancaster's at the bottom of your deck now, so you know you do have to deal damage to your opponent to kill them with Commonwealth, which is your end game plan. However, there is no world where that is better than killing Karis right now. Because if your opponent can just attack and play a United We Stand, for example, they can just kill your Wellington. On top of them being able to just kill it with a Hellcat, which is entirely possible. So, yeah, I'm just... I think Baron recognizes that this is a mistake. It's just a very, very unfortunate turn. Ran out of time. There's a lot of options. Captain A very quick here to play strategic bombing. Makes sense. Limits the credits early, kills the Wellington, and then you can use the KARDS to even clean up the Panzer 3H. Another possibility that Baron was looking for the carpet bombing to play on turn 7, because carpet bombing is a card in his deck. But as we just see from what Captain A played the section that was in his hand, which buffs these legions out of Commonwealth range. And if you don't really want to play Commonwealth on turn 7 to kill Karis, because you could have killed Karis on this turn, so you prevent your opponent from getting additional draws. And here he just goes for C4 Sunstrike. I mean, I think that's fine. At this point, you're sort of in just like a damage mitigation mode, trying to like avoid throwing as hard as possible. But at this point, it is going to take a bit of a miracle for Baron to come back. Some games only require one bad turn to be completely turned on their head. And this is sort of one of those games. Baron actually, if he had the carpet bomb here, he could take out every unit but the tower now. I'm not sure why Captain A chose to be so greedy. Like, if he hadn't hit face, instead of hitting face for 5, if he had just killed the Panzer 3H, I feel like it would have been quite a bit better off, rather than going for this play. Like, I understand why he's trying to deal damage, because he's trying to reduce Baron below 30. He's trying not to die to Commonwealth, especially with Baron doing Wellington face. He assumes Baron has Commonwealth in hand, and now Baron does have Commonwealth in hand. Here, Captain A, his entire board is pinned, so he does double research, and now he can go for that penicillin if he wants. Obviously, he will mill like his entire deck, but he can go for penicillin, which will get him up above, like, essentially out of range. We also see him playing section first to play around Ultra. And here, Baron is looking to do a double C4th Sexton. Well, C4th Sexton as well as already having the C4th. And he chooses to pin the 6-6 in the front line, the idea being he doesn't want it being buffed with intel to a 7-7 and just killing one of these C4ths. However, that does leave the issue of the KARDS still being able to attack, but you've seen what Unity is Strength gone. Or not Unity is Strength, United We Stand gone. And if your opponent has Stars and Stripes, you're losing your entire board anyways. You're kind of past the point of playing around Stars and Stripes. And he knows that Captain A can't add nukes to his hand to add both. It's almost impossible. It is possible. He could have, the United We Stand. To do attack with KARDS, United We Stand, add nukes to hand, you go up to 9. But other than that, it's really difficult for Captain A to get nukes. I guess the only other option is his second Red Devils. Move up Legion's second Red Devils, plus research. But again, it's very, very difficult, because if he plays the sections, the tar now actually draws. So the section actually is a net positive draw force in your deck. And here, so instead he goes for the California. Again, this board is just incredibly vulnerable to Kyber Bombing, like practically immediately losing to Kyber Bombing. And here, I really dislike this play by Baron. I understand why he's doing it though. So there's two reasons. One, he passes with 3 credits up, so Captain A is thinking about Ultra, which could theoretically prevent him from playing the Research. However, he does have Section in hand, so he could easily just play Section and then Research. However, he can't do Section and then add nukes to hand, because the Section will put 9 cards up to hand, and then the nukes he'll only get 1. So he can't add 2 nukes to hand while playing around Ultra. He can do Section and then Penicillin, which will get him out of Carpet Bomb range. Not Carpet Bomb range, Commonwealth range. And it will also draw him... really, he's drawing like 3 cards that turn, essentially. Actually, only 2 cards. Like, in terms of only 2 new cards are entering his hand. And if one of those is the second Unity is Strength, United we stand, sorry. He can take out the Sexton, which means he'll be at 23. And he doesn't know the Lancaster's not in the deck, but I mean, you've got to be feeling pretty good with Wellington and Sexton both gone, and Monty and Schelling both gone, and you have a huge front line. And the reason Baron attacked face is obviously he is thinking about the possibility of Captain A going for healing, whether that be the Penicillin or he finds the 3rd milk truck. However, and then I guess his win condition is top decking the like a 3rd fortification and doing 3rd fortification holding up the countermeasure, National Fire Service, sorry, and then going for a victory where essentially Captain A can destroy the Seaforths and attack face for a lot, but the National Fire Service will reduce that attack to only like 2 or 3 damage, so Baron stays above 30 and then is able to Commonwealth. So basically he's going for a top deck fortification next turn is my only out. However, I think that you have a better chance of winning with fortification top deck next turn if you actually trade. Because if you look at the math, like if you just look at the board, and it is slightly different because if your Sexton sticks around, you can then trade on your turn, like the following turn. You also have the Sudden Strike in hand. You'll be able to do Fortification, Sudden Strike, hold up National Fire Service. But you are sort of putting all your eggs in one basket. Whereas if you start trading, you can survive for longer. You can find a Lend-Lease. Like, you'll be able to survive long enough to play a Lend-Lease, and maybe that Lend-Lease will draw you into a Kyber Bombing. And it is worth noting that Baron runs 1 copy of Monsoon Rot in the deck, which means if he top decks Monsoon Rot at any point, he can fully wipe the board. Like, he can do Monsoon Rot root out and just fully wipe the board. And if the board gets fully wiped, he can very easily come back in this game. So, yeah, I'm just not a huge fan. Like, I don't understand why Sexton face is the play as opposed to Sexton kill one of these legions. Because you're just reducing the amount of attacks he can get through. Like, he can get in past the Seaforths. I understand why you're not killing the KARDS at this point. High altitude bombing mill, pretty good from Baron's point of view. And Captain A plays Medical Battalion, which means all of these guys are healing back to full. Which, again, man, if you had just traded, it would have been so good. And we do see Captain A playing around the Ultra. And here, Baron, he's got some plays. It is really looking like he's going for the Rural Britannia. And I think going for the Rural Britannia here is fair. And then you probably just take out the... like, do Rural Britannia and then take out the KARDS with Sexton. And then, like, if you want to attack into one of the legions with your Seaforth Guards, you can. And here, let's just look at what he does. He goes for the Rule Britannia. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. He's running out of time. He's looking at attacking. And there's just a lot of options. The timer starts, and as soon as the timer starts, he just sort of lets go, and that is what he ends up with. So, let's just quickly recap what just happened. So, we attacked with the 4-3 legions with one of the Seaforths. That's perfectly fine. Um, but he sudden striked a 5-4 legions while not attacking with a 4-4 artillery. So you just straight up did not need to play the sudden strike there. Like, it's just actively worse. You are destroying resources from your hand when you can accomplish the exact same thing on the board without missing any damage face, without taking damage on a unit. It's straight up just you did not deal 4 damage for free for 2 credits, and then instead played a 2 credit card from your hand, which just dealt 4 damage, essentially. And we will see. Not having that sudden strike will come back. So yeah, other than that, I don't hugely disagree with this. I'm still a little like I still find it a little suspect keeping the Karis around, but I guess the idea by this point is you're just like flooding their hand with sections, and like maybe you can win on fatigue, and they just like mill a good portion of their deck. Um, However, this is also just like the fuel for this tar now. I mean, Cabernet probably wants to get rid of the tar now by this point, just because he doesn't want to draw 2 cards every time he plays a section. And let's just speed this up a little bit. Captain A attacks with the tar now, attacks with the Cali, takes out 2 units, plays B17, misses the 50-50 to hit the Sexton. But, I mean, at this point, look at the board. Baron needs a miracle. And here, Baron has a good play and a not so good play. So, the good play here is to kill the medical battalion. And the reason killing the medical battalion is good is Captain A does not run We Can Do It. Captain A does not run Cadet Nurse Corps. Captain A does not run anything else in his deck that can buff the health of these units. Well, I suppose the Legions can get buffed by just any Intel card, which again would be really nice around this time to have a Sudden Strike in your hand, rather than not have a Sudden Strike in your hand. I think the idea Baron was going for was I killed the B-17, and then he is forced to trade the Tarnow into the Sexton before this medical battalion goes off, which means the Tarnow and the Sexton trade. So the Sexton's essentially trading for 2 of his big units, and then I could root out the medical battalion next turn. However, that means the medical battalion is getting more value. The medical battalion is healing all of the damage that the Carpet Bomb did. Whereas if you kill the medical battalion, yes, you lose your Sexton to the B-17, but then that B-17 immediately dies to the root out. I mean, I guess his idea is still banking on drawing the Monsoon Rot, and like maybe he doesn't want to have to play root out next turn, but Captain A runs B-17s in his deck. He runs Hellcats in his deck. Even like a mass deployment, or not mass deployment, sorry, that's just an underground state here wouldn't even be the worst because it just buys time for this Tarnow to heal back. And as we see, Hellcat comes out, which means Tarnow survives, which means Medical Battalion heals Tarnow again. And at this point, it's really up to Baron to top deck Monsoon Rot if he wants to have any chance of coming back in this game. I'm not sure if he runs Honeys. Let me quickly check that while Captain A goes through the rest of his turn. Baron runs 2 Honeys and 3 Fortifications and Research and 1 Naval Power. So he does not run a ton of healing. That is his last Fortification. He runs 2 Honeys, Research, 1 Naval Power. So at this point he has Honeys plus 7 heal is his max healing left in the deck, and this is the only National Fire Service in the deck. So by this point, Baron's like ability to win this game seems really, really small. And with that knowledge of, like, there's only 3 fortifications in the deck, it explains more why he kept 2, like why he was drawn to keeping 2 in the mulligan, because you think, oh, I only run 3 in this deck, and I need to get an early Commonwealth to win this, so I'm going to keep 2 of my 3 fortifications. However, it's also just further reason why you shouldn't keep fortification, because it's Commonwealth is not a huge win condition, whereas you're running cards like Annihilation, Grenadier Guards, these huge numbers of board wipes, you are capable of at least prolonging this game a very long amount of time to draw your fortifications, or you potentially could even just win this game off of your units. Instead of just going for this like Hail Mary Commonwealth strategy right out of the gates, that had a very, very small likelihood of working. And here, I mean, Baron, honestly, like, so if we just go back to this situation, it might even just be better for Baron to play Commonwealth to draw. Another possibility would be Fortification, National Fire Service. So you reduce the amount of damage the opponent can deal to 2, at least in the front line, and then just pray for the Monsoon Rot. Like, at this point, your best bet is probably just going for the Monsoon Rot. Top deck. Like, I do think that is sort of your best bet. Going for just Fortification, Grenadier Guards, Flampanzer means that your opponent can just sack both of these in. I can see the argument for why National Fire Service is worth more than these units. I can see the argument for that. Your opponent does run B-17s and whatnot, but you've seen one B-17. High altitude bombing is gone. Their hand is incredibly full of pretty terrible cards. And here, props to Captain A, this is a really good play. Choosing to just attack face, recognizing that this Flampanzer does not actually do anything. This Flampanzer is not particularly useful, so he's just going to put as much face in. Now, when he knows Baron does not have the National Fire Service, which is, again, sort of why I think that he should have played the National Fire Service. Because even if he had top-decked a Monsoon Rot here, Monsoon Rot fully wipes the board. Well, technically not. You're left with a 2-1 Flampanzer. But it essentially fully wipes the board. And how do you win? Like, you would need to top deck Honey, Honey, and then, like, Lend-Lease, Lend-Lease, Naval Power, Radar. Like, you need to heal 12, and there's only 7 plus Honeys left in your deck, and you have no card draw in hand, other than this Commonwealth. And you've sacrificed your Grand Guards. You've sacrificed literally every unit in your hand. So, yeah, how do you come back here without, even with the Monsoon Rot? So this is a very good learning opportunity in something that an early skill a lot of players in any card game will learn is playing to your outs. So if you're in a situation where you are losing, it's not best to just continue on your game plan of how you would normally play the game, because you are losing. You are not going to win the way you would normally win. And it's also not just worth surrendering because you are losing, and you can't win the way you normally win. You have to think about all of the cards in your deck, think about the current state of the board, like how many cards your opponent has, how many cards they have on board, what cards they probably have in their hand or in deck, and basically come up with the number of ways you could win this game. And then, once you've calculated the number of ways you could win this game, that's a pretty standard skill a lot of people learn. And you can see that's what Baron was sort of going for. It was sort of like, I win this game with Commonwealth. However, you also have to evaluate. You are rarely only going to have one strategy, or one avenue of winning. It's rare that it is, I need exclusively this card into this card into this card, and that's the only way I can win, regardless of how I play. It's usually you'll have quite a few different ways to win. And you might evaluate it and say, well, I can draw a card. Like, I can play in a way where I draw one of 2 cards to survive. Or I can play in a way where I can draw a single card to survive. And the rational thing is just, oh, well, I'm going to play in the way that I have more options to survive. However, when you're playing to your outs, it's not important to just play to survive. You need to play to win. If you can go for a way that gives you a like 40% chance of surviving an extra turn, that's neat, but you're not going to win with that extra turn. You're not just going to suddenly win because you survived longer than you originally thought you were going to. So if you have a way that's you survive a turn longer 40% of the time, or a way where you can win the game like 5% of the time, you should go for the one where you win the game 5% of the time, because you were never going to win the game the other way. You're just going to survive longer. So this is really that situation where if Baron had thought a couple turns forward to the plane out the Grand Guides and the Flam Panzer, he would have seen that he's probably just going to take a ton of damage. And as soon as Captain A realizes that he doesn't have a National Fire Service up, he's just going to deal as much damage as he can. And now, even if Baron top decks the Monsoon Rot, which is what he needed to do anyways, he's taken too much damage to survive. So, yeah, this is a pretty good learning opportunity. And also, obviously, Baron just top decked his last Sudden Strike, but I'd like to point out how much this 10-7 Legions has done, because this 10-7 Legions was the same Legions that would have been killed if Baron had not wasted this previous Sudden Strike. So here, Baron doesn't even bother playing the Sudden Strike because National Fire Service means that the killing the Legions is essentially just killing a 1-1, and the only way he wins. Sorry, the only way he does not die, he almost certainly cannot win this game. It would take a complete and utter miracle. Captain A would have to like play every single card draw in his hand and die on fatigue, for Baron to win this game. So the only way he does not lose this game next turn is if he top decks Monsoon Rot. So it is correct to save the Sudden Strike there. Good play by him. Another problem is Captain A still has Research in hand. And here, that's just game over. Baron's played Shelling and Monty, so even if he has Lend-Lease, you don't have enough credits to play Monsoon Rot. There it is, right at the bottom of the deck. You can see it hovered over it. He knows what's up. So with that, Baron surrenders, and it's 1-1, and we go into game 3. And Baron has switched over to his third deck, which is US Poland Midrange. So this is the more standard version. You saw a lot of this back in the day. You've seen a little bit of it again now. You're probably much more likely to be familiar with this. And Captain A switches off his US Poland, since he won, to his Brit US Air. Now this is a very mid-rangey deck. It runs Thunderbolts. This is much more of a board control mid-rangey deck. It's not Burn. And yeah, we see Baron's hand not looking terrible. Picking up the Uprising there is actually really huge, because he has 5 Polish unit generation cards in his hand, which means this Uprising is potentially 5 credits, deal 5 damage. And if you can get a early board wipe against Brit Air that leads into board control, that's really, really good. So here, he chooses to go for the Plan West rather than the Skytrend, which is a good play because of close air support. I would like to highlight Captain A's play here, though. So Captain A did turn 1 Swordfish, which is pretty standard, especially when you're going first. Or, well, in this case, he's not actually going first, but when you're going second and your opponent passes on turn 1. Here he does turn 2 Greyhound and attack phase with the Swordfish. There is almost a 0% chance that this is the correct play, just sequentially. And also the Greyhound is 100% on the wrong side of the Swordfish. So this is a very, very small thing, but it can very easily come back and make you lose like 1 in 100 games. Or just negatively impact like 1 in 100 games. And that's a whole percentage point. If you play 100 games and you lose 1 of them because of this tiny mistake, that's the difference between like a 60% win rate and a 61% win rate. So the reason it is correct to always play the non-British air units, the first non-British air unit, on the left, and I don't mean on the left of the HQ, you do want it on the side, you want all of your units on the same side of the HQ, and you want that side of the HQ to be the right side of the HQ, for the same reason why you want the non-British air units to be on the left of you want the first non-British air unit to be on the left of all of the British air units. In this case, the Greyhound is on the right. And the reason for this is when you play the card HMS Illustrious, it will always spawn the two swordfishes generated by HMS Illustrious on the far right of your support line, which is why you want to play your units on the right so that you can buff them with close air support. But also, if he were to play HMS Illustrious on turn 3, now he probably won't, but let's just say for the sake of argument, his turn 3 play is HMS Illustrious. He will now have Bomber, Tank, Bomber, Bomber, which means he cannot buff all 3 bombers if he wants. I mean, obviously in this case, you could just move up the Greyhound, but again, for the sake of argument, the front line might be taken. So, essentially, is if you put the first non-British air unit on the right of your British air units, you are splitting your air units for close air support. So, for example, this swordfish might not be a swordfish. Maybe it's a Spitfire with Fury, and you want to buff the Spitfire with Fury. But you also want to buff your bombers. If you had played the tank on the left, you could buff one Spitfire, the tank, and one bomber, or you could buff 2 bombers and the Spitfire. However, if your board is Spitfire, tank, bomber, bomber, you can only buff the tank and the 2 bombers, or the Spitfire and the tank. You cannot buff the tank and the bombers. So, again, that's very rare to come up, but it is a huge mistake that I see a lot of people make on air all the time. And just because it does not you don't frequently get punished for it, it's just always a mistake to do it. I say always with an asterisk there because, like, there's very occasionally situations, like maybe you're playing around Bombing Raid, etc., etc., etc. Maybe you've already played HMS Illustrious and there's another card in your hand that you're trying to play around. Whatever it may be, there's technically situations where it's fine. But this is definitely not one of them. This is a pretty big mistake by Captain A. And also, the reason I say attacking the swordfish, there's a 90% chance that this is wrong. So it's just better to move up the Greyhound, protect the front line, stop a potential Red Devil, stop, you're putting a stop to a future Hellcat already. And the reason Captain A might have attacked face, there's a couple of reasons. One, he might have close air support, and next turn he wants to do close air support to buff both units. However, if that was the case, he should have played close air support that turn instead of attacking. Now, the argument might be he wants to play close air support on 3 1-drops. Well, in that case, he should have played the third 1-drop. Now, the argument might be he wants to top deck another 1-drop and then play close air support. In which case, I would say that is not particularly likely, and it's still better for him to move up the Greyhound and then just play top decked 1-drop close air support on the 2 drops with the tank in the front line already than it is to keep the tank back. So there's just like literally no reason to attack with Swordfish here. I mean, it's like technically damage efficient if his best play next turn is to move up and then attack with both, but that seems incredibly unlikely. And again, you are getting 1 damage out of that, and in that situation, you are more likely to the chance that you draw a 1-drop is better than the dealing 1 damage. So you would still want to move up the Greyhound, so next turn you can do attack, and play your 1-drop. So, yeah, just a silly mistake by Captain A. Here plays the Kitty Hawk. So, Baron, he has a few different options. I do think the best play is just play another Plan West and move up. Because if your opponent kills all of these legions, it means your Uprising is going to wipe the board. And you're pretty fine if the Uprising wipes the board. So, yeah, that's it in the end of what he does. Great play. Plan West, move up. And here, Captain A has a choice. Goes for the close air support. Again, should have played that on turn 2. Like, you don't need to milk every single card for maximum value if you can go for tempo instead. And here, it is best to just move up the Greyhound because of, yeah, and it is correct to attack because of Unity of Strength, and it's correct to move up the Greyhound to protect the Swordfish from Hellcat. However, this play does get punished really hard by Underground State, so Captain A was just sort of in a situation where he couldn't play around Hellcat and Underground State, and although it's more likely that Baron has Underground State than he has Hellcat, Hellcat punishes him a lot harder. So, yeah, I think Captain A's play is pretty fun. So here, Captain A has a few options. Goes for Albacore, killing both legions. Like, he's probably going to attack with the Kitty Hawk and kill the other legions. And then you should just float credits instead of playing the Swordfish. No point in getting blown out by Stars and Stripes or Strategic Bombing. Just take out the legions. Your deck runs more card draw than Baron's does. Baron is forced to deal with this Albacore because of the Paris-E. He can't just like slam a Tarnow or a California or something. Yep, and we just see Captain A. Go for that. Good play. Just take out the legions and pass. And here, I think Baron's... I mean, honestly, Baron can just like bait out the Paris-E. Well, no. Yeah, Hellcat here is just best. I was gonna say he can bait out the Paris-E, but Captain A doesn't even need to play the Paris-E because the Skytrain isn't even guarded by anything. So yeah, Hellcat take out the Albacore. This is fine. If Hellcat trades with Albacore and Kitty Hawk, you're perfectly fine with that. You still have this Uprising, which at this point is dealing 4 damage. Oh, not even actually. Your Uprising at this point is dealing 5 damage because you've played an Underground State already. So here Captain A does Swordfish, Finest Hour attack. And Baron can just do another Underground State and Skytrain. And here Baron makes a huge mistake. And it happened real fast, but let's just look at that again. Baron does point and back. So, the reason this is a mistake is it's turn 7. Baron should know how many legions have died. Or not even how many, like how many Polish cards have died. You've only played 3 Polish cards. You've played 2 Played Wests and an Underground State, which is 5 total cards, or, well, 5 card total units, and all of them have died. Your opponent hasn't played any Sendais that remove but don't destroy. They haven't done Confusion to take them from you, although that would actually still count because it counts enemies' Polish units as well. This is not a complicated game to figure out how many Polish units have died. This isn't like turn 20 of a mirror. And this is just a tiny little thing where it's like, you should be able to know how many Polish units have died. Like, yes, the card can tell you if you point at something, but, so, the card does 5 damage. Like, it does 5 damage. It would kill the Swordfish. And he doesn't play it. And it's correct not to play it. Like, I'm not saying playing under the Uprising here is correct. It isn't. But the fact that he hovered over it to see, he checked, it does kill the Swordfish, and then he doesn't play it, means that he wouldn't have played it no matter what the damage was. So why are you checking it now? When, again, you should just know what it is. And the reason this is such a big problem, it's not just like, oh, you need to memorize every single thing about your deck and the game in every game, is if I was in Captain A's position, I would now know with 100% certainty that my opponent has their Uprising. Because there is 2 cards in your deck that you would point, because the opponent sees you are pointing something at one of their units. So there's 2 cards in your deck that you would point. It's Underground State or Uprising. And if you point and immediately draw back, it is an Uprising, because you would play the Underground State without any thought. So, and I see Polish decks do this all the time. Like, every turn, they will point to check what their Uprising is at. So I know the Uprising is in their hand, so I play around it. So, yeah, it's, again, on turn 20, maybe you have no idea how much it deals, and you're like, well, if it does X amount of damage, I will play it this turn, so I need to check if it does X amount of damage because I've forgotten. That's fine. Like, you're going to forget sometimes, and that's just life. But there's no reason you even need to check on this turn, because, again, you would never play it no matter how much damage it's dealing. So, yeah, just very, very sloppy mistake by Baron. Captain A should now know. Obviously, I'm not Captain A, so I have no idea if Captain A noticed that or not. And the correct play, in my opinion, is to just do Underground State plus Skytrain. Get this bomber back to hand, get the buff off of it, and now you have a Skytrain protected. Reveal Slendleys and HMS Illustrious. By this point, if you're Baron, you gotta be feeling pretty bad. Rolling Jasko, it's really not what you want to see. So here, Captain A saw the Underground State come out from a different position in the hand, so it's not that he's even confused. He's like, oh, he thought he was going to play Underground State, then he brought it back, and then he played it again. No. if I was in Captain A's spot, I would 100% know Uprising is the hand. And I'm not trying to say that it's like a braggy thing. I think there's a lot of players, like a lot of high-level tournament players, who would 100% be confident that Baron would have Uprising in their hand by this position. Like, I'm confident Birdo would know that. Um, I'm confident Darkness would know that. Here, Baron has a few different options. He can just play Uprising, just immediately, wipe the board, and try to come back with Hellcat plus Sherman. That's a pretty good play. I'm kind of tempted to greed just a little harder on Uprising. I mean, at this point, though, Baron probably knows you have it. Like, and Captain Ace probably knows you have it, and he's probably fine if you play it because he can just immediately play Lend-Lease. Um, so yeah, like ideally you want to save Uprising for like this huge board wipe here. And you could just do move up Jasko Sherman, but your opponent's probably not going to commit more to the board, and they actually, by not committing more to the board, they get more credits, which means they might start holding up an Ultra, or at the very least passing with credits to potentially be holding up an Ultra. So, yeah, I do think it is just Uprising pass turn. And the plus side is, there's a good possibility Captain A's next turn will be Lend-Lease, play that Swordfish. And then your response is Hellcat, kill Swordfish, and draw with Sherman. And then you kind of want to draw into more intel, although you're already running pretty low on intel. But like a Karis, and suddenly this tile now is doing really well. You've seen one Parasy come out already. You've seen a Finest Hour and HMS, so you know there's very little chance of Blitz Bombers. And yeah, he does play the Uprising. Fully wipes the board. And here, Captain A actually plays Mobilization instead of Lend-Lease because it allows him to play 2 Swordfish, which means Baron can still do Hellcat, kill Sherman, or sorry, Hellcat, Sherman, kill Swordfish, but that also means that one of these Swordfish is gonna stick, which means like Albacore plus Empire Strikes can wipe the board, something like that. Even just Empire Strikes and like a close air support buff or Greyhound buff. Mosquito comes out, takes out Hellcat, and second Parasy takes out Sherman. And at this point, that's just unfortunate for Baron. Like, your opponent had almost all of their bombers plus double Parasy. He did have Uprising and double Hellcat. Like, he had a good hand. But a good hand from US Poland is not going to beat a good hand from Air. This is why Air was the best deck at the time. At least what he's doing is right, which is just trying to get. Oh, you see the Empire Strikes now as well. That is rough. Your opponent has cards for days. Your opponent can wipe your board. This Parasy, like this Swordfish with the Parasy on it is going to take out this tire now. And there's another bomber in hand. He's played HMS, Albacore, 2 Swordfish, and that's the second Albacore. I don't know if Captain A is playing Wellington or not, but man, he just has like every single bomber in the top like 15 cards of his deck with double Parasy Empire Strikes. Like, you win some, you lose some. This is one you're gonna lose. And it sucks because it's game 3 of a tournament game, like a tournament best of 3. And I do think Baron made the pretty big mistake by playing the Uprising, or showing the Uprising, but again, that was not going to have an impact on this game. Like, look at how this game is going. This game is not going well. Goes for the draw. Maybe if you had found a strategic bombing, you can take out both the bombers and potentially mount a comeback. The Unity is strength. Lets him take out the No, it's the United we stand. I'm going to mix up those cards until the day I die. Apparently, I just can't speak today. Lets him take out the Parasy, which removes the effect from Swordfish, so he moves up Red Devils and buffs. This is actually a really high-level play. I think a lot of players would have just like played out double 30 seconds. But getting this huge unit in the front line is good. Your opponent could RAF it. But it does cost 6 credits for them to do that. It means you're getting a Sherman draw. And they're down both Parasies and both Albacores. Like, your opponent also could, like, Sexton it or something. That would really suck. But again, you're essentially guaranteed a Sherman draw next turn. And they have to deal with the threat of this huge unit in your front line. And they go for the Wrath. Just retreat it. And play close air support. So here, you're just doing Sherman, trying to find good things. Strategic bombing is really good. Another 30-second is not really good. So you can take out the bombers, because Captain A did a pretty awkward placement of his units. Again, you have to all constantly be thinking about close air support when you are playing British air units. So I just want to draw attention to this. If this Albacore and the Swordfish was switched, this close air support could make a 2-4 bomber. Like, it could make the Swordfish into a 2-4 and keep the Albacore at a 1-2. And what that would accomplish is, like, they all died to Stars and Stripes anyways. Well, not all of them, which is why he played the buff on the 2 fighters to get the Mosquito out of range. But basically the difference is both the bombers die to strategic bombing this way, whereas if you had buffed the Swordfish instead of the Albacore, the Swordfish would survive. And it's not that Captain A necessarily made a mistake on that turn, because he couldn't buff the Swordfish while also buffing the Wrath, and he wanted to buff the Wrath. However, the mistake is, like, several turns earlier when he played the Albacore on that side, or when he played the Wrath on that side. Because even after, if you have 2 units on the board, you can still control where you place the 3rd unit, to make cast work out fine for a 4-unit board. So yeah, bit of a misstep from Captain A, but I don't think it's really going to be enough to potentially cost him the game. Baron is building a bit of a board, but Captain A still has Monty and Shelling in his deck. It's just really difficult to see how Baron can possibly come back in this game. Captain A actually just decides to sack the both guards. There's a good possibility that it's because he has Spitfire plus Finest Hour in hand, so he's just opening up the HQ. Here, Baron's actually 1 credit off lethal, or 1 damage off lethal, which is why he's going for this. I think he's done the math. He's counting now. It's very unfortunate for him. He actually came pretty close to winning this. And here he makes a pretty big mistake right at the end, which is giving his opponent the credit. So, looking at Baron's hand right now, Baron's hand is empty. He plays the Unity as strength. Baron's hand is straight up empty. Unless he's top decking like Sherman into Sherman into Sherman next turn, Baron does not need to be at 13 credits. Whereas Captain A is going to have 7 cards in hand, 2 of which draw, at least 2 of which draw. Yeah, you just do not want to give your opponent credit. So, for example, the difference between 12 and 13 could very easily be the difference between having the credits to play the convoy you know is in hand to draw the Spitfire for Spitfire Finest Hour lethal. Like, at this point, you're probably assuming my opponent has it in hand already anyways, which is why he went for the double sack the guard play. But again, you gotta play to your outs, and you gotta go for, like, any way that raises your chances to win whatsoever. Yeah, I also would have liked not actually playing the last 30 seconds, just because Wrath returning this 8-7 to hand would suck. We see the Gladiator Lend-Lease. Monty. And P-38 Lighting. And, yeah, you can basically just accept that you've lost. Your opponent's going to almost certainly be able to draw into Shelling if they can't just kill you this turn anyways. And here we see the Spitfire. We see the Finest Hour. It didn't play around Cass correctly, but it doesn't matter. Cass comes out. Captain A takes it 2-1 and eliminates Baron from the June OCC qualifiers. And, yeah. I mean, both players made some mistakes. I think I highlighted really the areas for Baron to improve his game, which is being sharper in the evaluation of what your outs are. So not just like tunnel visioning on this is my out, so I'm going to like hard play for this and just play for the next turn in a losing game. You can't just play for the next turn in a losing game. You have to play for a win. And when you're playing for a win, sometimes that requires going for plays that give you a smaller chance to survive. But if you survive 2 turns and don't win the game, it doesn't matter. Um, so yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard lesson to see in your games because it does just feel like, oh, I have a 60% chance to survive next turn or a 10% chance, and I'm going to go for the 10% chance because it gives me a higher chance to win later on. I mean, thanks very much for the submission, Baron. I hope I did not, like, I don't know, make you feel bad. That's not the point of the series. It's not to make someone feel bad, not trying to make someone feel, like, worse at the game. It is just trying to be educational, trying to help people improve. Um, so with that being said, if you would like to submit your own posts, um, like your own videos for analysis, I have a small backlog already. So if you do submit one, don't be surprised or upset if I don't do your video like immediately because I do already have a bit of a backlog to get through, but I am accepting more because this is going to be, or I would like this to be, a reoccurrent series on this channel. Um, so yeah, please submit. A bit of information about the submission process. Like it's not going to be a hard fast rule. So for example, just with Baron, Baron sent in a tournament set, so he played 3 different decks, and it was 3 games. On the post, I say try to submit 2 games with the same deck. Um, Again, it's not a hard fast rule. Do what you want. Submit 1 game, submit 3 games. I will choose to maybe cut down if you submit too many games or the games are too long. But we'll see. Pretty open ended on that. I would like a copy of your deck list if possible, because again, when you're playing for your outs, knowing what is in your deck is a huge deal. Because, for example, with Baron, Baron ran Monsoon Rod, and I would not have immediately thought Baron ran Monsoon Rod, so I would be wondering why Baron is going for a play where he's completely losing on board. And the answer is because he has the possibility of drawing the Monsoon Rod to completely wipe the board. So deck lists is very important. Also, a general idea of the size of your collection, because um, for lower level, like submissions from lower ranked players, uh, I might have some suggestions about what cards you could run in your deck if I think your deck is somewhat weak. And I don't want to be like, oh, just run all of these cards that you don't own. But if you say, oh, I have a full collection, then it will be much easier to say, oh, you should just run these cards. Or if you're saying, I have absolutely no collection, then it's like, okay, you have a weak deck because you have a small collection. That's perfectly fine. We'll just focus on your gameplay and try to improve your gameplay. Um, and also, if you're submitting a older recording, let me know what patch it was played on. So, for example, this Baron one is from June, so I got a better idea of what the meta is, what certain card balances is like. So, also gets an idea of like what you're playing around. And yeah, that's basically all the information. You can DM me your videos on Discord. That's the primary way I will be accepting submissions. So, link to my Discord in the description. And yeah, like upload them on YouTube as unlisted, or upload it to Google Drive. However you want to do it, whatever works best for you. And yeah, maybe you will be featured in one of these videos in the future. So, hope you like the series. Let me know your thoughts, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.